With Frostpunk 2 finally a reality and looking astounding, let's look at other similar games you can play right now and a few that have yet to come out. Do note that both Banished and RimWorld could be part of this list, but I have already made full lists of similar games to them, meaning that in this video I won't mention the same games unless they went from being announced to released in the meantime. So if you want to find more games like these, you can always expand the scope of your search to those two other video lists as well, linked up here on the right and down in the description.
Steward, build us a better home!
The first of these games that is very similar to Frostpunk is IXION, because it checks almost all the gameplay boxes, and it has a great review score on Steam considering it has more than 10,000 reviews already. Among its regular updates, the latest one added new game difficulty and modes to play in, like the Journey mode, in which you can enjoy the game's narrative without going deeply into city building and management aspects. A directly opposite game mode is called Challenge, and that one is an unrelenting fight for survival against everything that living on a massive space station roaming the endless universe can bring. Of course, you still have the middle ground in the default game mode, where you have to manage both your limited space and resources. Also keep the space station operational, all the while making sure the population is content or risk a full-on mutiny. The gameplay is enriched by both the decisions you must make when presented with your population's requests and the expeditions you can send across solar systems. I do have to say that while Frostpunk's art design was one of the main ways it captured our attention, in IXION it is the incredible music you get to listen to while exploring the universe. Another possible Frostpunk competitor is titled New Cycle, but instead of going sci-fi like the previous game on this list, it was kept local on our Earth after an apocalypse, and its developer even tried a somewhat successful dieselpunk style with the aesthetics. Many reviewers call it a lesser version of Frostpunk with bad UI, and yet the most recent Steam reviews paint a much more positive picture. That could be down to the latest updates, which have added new maps and effects, new buildings and materials, several new gameplay mechanics including industrial scale logistics and distribution of consumer goods, as well as a host of other changes and additions from the feedback players have provided. Just like in Frostpunk, here too you have both natural and man-made disasters to worry about and prepare for, on top of managing your people's basic needs. Decisions are just as hard to make here, while the resources and manufacturing branches are quite more numerous. And this is no surprise, since you are not stuck in a space station or an ice sheet with limited space, but have an entire map to explore and expand on. However, if you prefer that kind of limited space in your survival builders, then I would recommend Flotsam, which despite numerous updates is still in early access 5 years after its initial release. But don't let that discourage you from playing this charming ocean survival and management builder, as it has some really great ideas for both map progression and exploration. I was personally charmed by this game because of its aesthetics and bright pastel colors, which are quite opposite to most of the game art designs we have seen on this list thus far. That doesn't mean it has no dangers in it, as the salt water isn't drinkable, edible plants don't grow in it, and there are all sorts of dangers and diseases in this polluted ocean filled with the junk of the old world. The scale in Flotsam is definitely much smaller, which in turn makes it much more micro-intensive when you're trying to juggle all the aspects of a traveling ocean float, which can grow to the size of a small village. This one deserves more players, if not for its charm, then for the persistence of its developer on his long road to the full release, who just added farming and a chef profession to the game. Now let's dive from the ocean's surface to its bottom, where we can find Aquatico, a much newer game which is all about underwater survival and lets you harvest resources with the newest tech available to humankind. The surface of the Earth is now a wasteland, so not only do you extract and refine resources underwater, but also must learn to keep your population fed and happy in an environment they're not equipped to live in. It has one of the lowest but still positive scores of the games on this list, but I honestly never understood why. In any case, the ever-present sharks and whales are a real danger to your community and intricate logistical networks, keeping them supplied with oxygen and other life-sustaining materials. What I like the most about Aquatico is the way you can use space on the ocean floor, but also just above in the water, so the humans don't have to see how their machines are destroying yet another biosphere to keep them pampered and secure. It almost feels like a commentary on human nature, intended or not. This game also features both research and expeditions, so it ticks off a few more boxes required to be a game like Frostpunk. Probably the latest game to be released, which can be considered Frostpunk-like, is the Crust, which had a very aggressive marketing campaign, many ridiculed because of its constant comparisons with the great games of the genre, but it surprised them all after it started getting positive reviews on release. Its setting is the moon, on which you don't only mine the local resources and set up automated foundries for their processing, but also research new tech, run trade with the Earth, and even send out lunar expeditions. This is done by deploying your rover in attempts to locate some unknown and hidden secrets. There is more content on the way, as the developers are constantly patching the game, partly due to some performance issues. What is mostly different in this game compared to the others is the use of conveyor belts and drones for delivery of resources and goods, while the human element is much the same. You have a bunch of colonists, and considering the hostile environment of a hard vacuum, they have a lot of needs and wants. Trading is additionally complicated due to the presence of factions in the game, meaning there is also some political landscape to navigate besides the lunar one. Since we have been to space, the ocean, under the ocean, now it's time to go back to the dirt of Mother Earth again in Endzone 2, a sequel of a game I personally enjoyed very much, especially because of its diverse expeditions and massive settlements. These large maps is the one element which doesn't match Frostpunk's gameplay, but I wanted to include it since New Cycle, one of the previous games on this list, has similarly big maps to build on. Endzone 2 is another very recently released post-apocalyptic survival colony builder. It also has a huge range of items to collect and produce to help your survivors flourish in a harsh and unforgiving world. What makes this sequel a notable addition to this video list are the much expanded expeditions through the treacherous terrain scattered with ruins, loot and missions, as well as the addition of vehicles. On top of that, now you can manage multiple settlements and connect them with trade routes. Building, technology research, toxic rain and sandstorms will be your weekly companions, but the issues the first game had with survivors' movement paths and job distribution should no longer exist. I showcased this game fully in a video linked here and down in the description.
Your journey awaits, survivor.
Another game I showcased on my channel and which can be considered Frostpunk-like is Infection Free Zone. One important difference in this game, however, is the presence of enemies on the map you play on, which is the same map you send out expeditions to and which are far more interactive than in most other games on this list. Additionally, here you have enemies to contend with instead of natural or supernatural disasters in the form of zombies and other post-apocalyptic monsters. It has had a great response from players, good reviews, and the developers have been updating it regularly with both content and patches. Like how indoor movement has been added to the game, allowing the squads to pass through buildings or go to a specific place in large buildings. They also added lots of extra gear for survivors, a tree regrowth system and the reproduction system, all the things that players were having issues with and requested in their feedback. One of Infection Free Zone's crowning features is the possibility of playing on real-world maps and basically simulating the zombie apocalypse in your own neighborhood.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Now, considering most games on this list have very dark settings and horrible disasters, I wanted to also put some more relaxed and cheerful games, even if they won't match Frostpunk in that regard. First of these is the Tropico franchise and its latest Tropico 6 title, which has an excellent Steam rating based on a lot of reviews. The two elements which make this builder and manager look much more similar to Frostpunk despite its sunny beaches and tropical environment are the El Presidente, your own ruler character, and the limited building space since every Tropico game is set on islands. There is never a lack of political turmoil and social unrest in this game, and a lot of factions to appease or anger all the while you try to fill your Swiss bank account and skim millions from tourist income, fruit and goods exports or local taxes. Tropico has research and even sort of expeditions, but here you're sending your agents on raids to steal and relocate world wonders and monuments to your already crowded and overbuilt islands. Did I mention you have a palace to customize? No? Well, now I have.
Viva Tropico!
Since Tropico was about islands, we might as well cover another game about surviving on the ocean itself. This is the setup in Buoyancy, a small indie game which has a drowning Steam review rating and no one is coming to save it, least of which its developer. The reason why I mention it in this video is because while it might not be finished, it doesn't have a high price, and some people manage to play it for a considerable number of hours, meaning there is content in it to enjoy. Its gameplay is similar to Flotsam, the game I already talked about in this video, so you have a floating city moving on the waves where you build new sections by placing floating platforms and connecting them to each other. There is a sort of exploration of the ocean, managing your survivors' happiness, jobs and food, as well as sickness and fires, which are the biggest dangers to them. A similar situation, but with a game which was actually finished by its developers, can be found on the Steam store page of Floodland. This title also has less than stellar Steam reviews, but it is at least sold as a finished game whose last update, called New Tide, completed its features. As with many of the other games on this list and Frostpunk itself, here too the Earth was ravaged by a disaster, a climate themed in this one, and you are left with only the remains of our civilization to try and keep a few survivors alive for a bit longer. I must say I personally enjoyed it, as I liked the art style, the management of its people and the myriad of clans they have splintered into, collection and processing of resources, as well as the exploration with expeditions, which are on the same map on which you build your own settlement. Not only is there a system of tech research in Floodland, but also all sorts of laws akin to those in Frostpunk, with many side effects you must try to work around. One thing most of the games on this list lack, despite having the right gameplay elements, is a sort of recognizable lore or a familiar setting. This is something developers who made the Land of the Vikings fixed by using the settings spelled out in their title. A bit on the nose, I know, and it hasn't helped it get very good reviews. But importantly, they didn't waste the setting, as their game has actual raids for plunder. You can send your Vikings by ship and even take part in combat, well, sort of combat, not actual battles, and you also have to defend your own settlement. There is some variety in your villagers who have certain characteristics taken from a pool, and while you build and manage the settlement, they will gather resources and farm the land. This depends of course on the season, as there are both harsh winters and stormy summers in this game. These weather events are nothing though compared to earthquakes or lightning that seems like it's coming from Asgard itself.
And survive the wrath of the gods.
There is actually one more ocean-themed game on this list I want to tell you about, and it too doesn't have stellar reviews or a lot of them. This is Surviving the Abyss, which was designed to be a dark, hardcore underwater colony builder with disasters and the always oppressive darkness, which you had to dispel by placing lights at the bottom of the ocean and keep them on. The crew that you have in this game is rather small, but keeping them alive in this ecosystem is not an easy task, as at minimum you have to make sure they have oxygen, power and food. Their sanity is another thing you have to worry about while they discover the secrets of cloning and do genetic research on the local wildlife. Meaning that besides building, survival and management, you also have research and manufacturing in this game. But unfortunately it hasn't received any updates for almost half a year and remains in early access. Since I showed you Surviving the Abyss, it is only fitting I talk about Surviving the Aftermath next. And this game is not just completed, but it also has half a dozen DLCs of content. Some of those received really bad reviews, but the base game has received thousands of good reviews. And don't let the numbers fool you, as it was originally released on Epic, so that is why not so many people own it on Steam. I personally played it a lot because I really enjoyed the second gameplay layer, which isn't just for sending expeditions made up of specialists, but combat, conquering territories, collecting loot, vehicles, building outposts, and even making alliances with other settlements who can be your trading partners. Your own settlement can be attacked by humans and hit by all sorts of natural disasters, including meteors and disease. There is a lot of stuff to build and manage, as well as decisions to make in different situations. The developer and publisher might have pulled many bad moves with the game, but despite it all, I would still recommend it.
We will make our own fate.
One more game which I adore and which also started off as an Epic exclusive but exploded when it arrived on Steam and now has one of the highest ratings of all games ever on Steam is Against the Storm. It is not only incredibly good with a beautiful art design, but it also matches Frostpunk in many other regards as well. Your community is small and the maps on which you build are small. There is a story to follow and lots of decisions to make which directly impact your settlers. The only difference is, most of them aren't human and you build numerous outposts during one playthrough. Those are in fact your expeditions, which supply and help your central city and your queen. It has some roguelike aspects and a system of progression. It is such a novel approach to survival builders, and the team behind it updated it more times than I can count without a single DLC to sell. This is until the 26th of September, when their very first paid content update / DLC is set to be released, bringing new species, a new biome, lots of new buildings, and all the other gameplay elements. What keeps people coming back to it are numerous ways to win each time, and almost infinite combinations of buildings, species of settlers, items, and explorable events, making every single new settlement unique in some way. There isn't a game I would recommend you to play more except Frostpunk 2 itself.
A new challenge always awaits in Against the Storm.
This next game also has a really high review score and a very different setting. We are back to Earth and another radioactive post-apocalyptic version of it, where people can only live high on mountain cliffs. Hence the title, Cliff Empire. It's not in early access, but it still receives updates from time to time from its sole developer. It takes building on small maps to another level, quite literally in fact, as it gives you the ability to construct a space station no less. There are some mission type objectives to follow as you construct lots of different buildings and connect cliffs with bridges. Production chains are in the game as well as research and some choices. A neat addition is the ability to switch to a free camera and walk through your creation. Whatever you build will have to stand the test of disasters and climate events, while your people have their own petty needs and wants. Before I move on to a few more games which I think match Frostpunk close enough to be on this list, I'm going to mention Manor Lords, as I fear I would get thousands of comments asking why Manor Lords isn't on this list otherwise. As you probably know, it was developed by one lone indie dev, in Unreal Engine no less, with the help of a few specialists along the way, and turned out to be one of the best-selling indie games of 2024. It blew my mind and I totally agree with all the positive reviews. But it has in-depth city building, complex production chains, trade and tactical battles, along with the people to manage and neighbors to interact with, making it, in my eyes, far wider in gameplay terms than Frostpunk itself or many of the Frostpunk-like games on this list. I could be wrong and you can tell me so in the comments below. Anyway, it is one of the best looking games of the entire genre, already with massive potential for future content, and with not just a brilliant developer behind it, but also a kind and wholesome publisher. There is a bright future ahead of it, and even if it isn't the Frostpunk-like game you might be looking for, it is worth playing on its own merits. We have seen settlement building on mountains before on this list, but not one in this older technological setting or with the ever-present danger of avalanches. This is the theme of Laysara Summit Kingdom, which doesn't just give you limited space to build on and disasters to tear it all down, but also a major goal to strive for: conquering the mountain peak and constructing a temple at its summit. But before you can achieve this lofty goal, you have to take it one mountainside step at a time, as you establish towns, production chains, build homes and a complex transport network consisting of roads, bridges and shafts to ensure goods get to all your people and trade partners. The great thing about this game is that it has a campaign and a sandbox, while each mountain differs in shape, vegetation zone layouts, resource availability and weather conditions, meaning you have a fresh challenge each time you start. And if challenging gameplay is what you want, there is nothing like trying to learn and play a haphazardly designed game which doesn't even let your population have normal air to breathe. This is just part of the premise in this post-apocalyptic survival city builder titled IXION, and it includes a centerpiece structure, which in this case doesn't provide heat like in Frostpunk, but air. And besides having to find a way to keep your people alive with enough air, water and food, you also have to protect them from frosts, droughts and deadly winds by providing shelter and power. You can gather new survivors from across the globe, educate them and have them work on researching new buildings, or choose to send them on expeditions to find food and materials. At the end of the list, I want to mention two games which are coming out on Steam in the future, and both of which have very dark tones along with quite different art styles. Bonus fact, they already have demos you can try out. The first is called Worshippers of Cthulhu, and not only do you build cities across multiple islands for your people, but also have a goal of awakening some terrifying Lovecraftian entities. The second upcoming game is IRONHIVE, and it features expeditions along with the colony building and management gameplay, but with the extra twist of using a system of cards and a deck. There is a narrative in this one too, with choices set before you, meaning not every playthrough leads to the same final act. I hope you will try both of these demos and let me know how you like them. For even more building and colony management games, follow the cards on the screen or links in the description. Thank you for watching and happy gaming!